But just before I look at who's paying for all this amazing growth in public EV chargers, I must talk about subsidies. You see, there's a growing thread in my comments section claiming that EVs only work if there are massive tax breaks, grants and direct subsidies. They demand that all EV subsidies should stop and the EV industry should stand or fall on its own merits. These are from well-intentioned individuals, well, I assume they're individuals, but does anyone else see the pure hypocrisy? This is Dave Takes It On. I'm Dave. I'm providing the real data. If this is the sort of video you like to watch, then please subscribe. So let's tackle that one head on and talk subsidies, grants and tax breaks for a moment. Now, there was an original EV grant in 2012. It's estimated to have cost about 1.6 billion before the scheme was closed 2022. The latest direct EV grant has a budget set aside for 1.3 billion. In addition, VED, vehicle road tax, being free, costs the government lost revenue, as does benefit in kind for the Treasury, the inland revenue. The great EV charger rollout and the latest levy, well, a total probably another couple of billion or so. Yeah, EV drivers get help. But what about those ICE drivers? You see, over the last 7 years, our multi-billion pound oil producers received 13.3 billion in tax breaks. The OECD reports that they currently enjoy about 17.5 billion each and every year in tax concessions for fossil fuels and their customers. Oh, another 20 billion has been allocated to help the oil giants dismantle their old oil rigs at the end of their useful life. Not forgetting the 21 billion allocated to cleaning up the burning of these fossil fuels with research into carbon capture and carbon storage. And it's not just the oil giants that benefit. The cherry on top of the icing on top of the cake of hypocrisy is for the individual petrol, diesel and hybrid car drivers who have received more than £120 billion worth of direct subsidies by fuel duty. That's truly obscene. The duty was first introduced in 1928, then scrapped, then reintroduced, then revamped 1993 to include an inflation escalator. Fuel duty was legally obliged to go up by the rate of inflation since 1993, but the rate was actually cut in 2011. And then ever after remained frozen until 2022, when a 5p cut was again added, or should that be deducted? Zero indexing for inflation has occurred since. Indeed, this year, thanks to the Iran war and the petrol prices, the government has already announced a possible further freeze or even a possible further cut in fuel duty. The total loss to the Treasury is now estimated at between 120 and 133 billion, all to the direct exclusive benefit of individual ICE car motorists. Now, I often use 2012 as a starting point in many calculations because before that date, EVs and all associated industries simply did not exist in any meaningful way in the UK. So does anyone want to add up that little total over the last 14 years? Yeah, I suspect not. So surprisingly, I agree with the sentiment of the thread. All grant subsidies and tax breaks for all transport industries should be immediately stopped. And I do mean all industries. But then, of course, we wouldn't even have a motor industry today, would we? Who can forget British Leyland, their bailout, or DeLorean, its bailout? It goes on to this day. How much has Honda or Toyota been paid by our government to set up factories here making petrol, diesel and hybrid cars? See, these people asking to remove all support for EVs while keeping all their absolutely massive obscene support for themselves and the entire oil industry and motor industry, they need a reality check. If EVs had received even 10% of the direct savings made just by freezing the fuel duty escalator, we'd have many more EVs on our roads and our air would be much cleaner and healthier. If the oil giants, who saw the value increase recently by 75 billion entirely due to the war in Iran, gave up their multi-billion special treatment, which they clearly don't need, petrol would be very much dearer than it is today, and many more drivers would be looking into EVs without grants. I don't ever give any credit whatsoever to these hypocrites and bigots until they campaign to remove all of their own subsidies, grants and tax breaks. I'm waiting. Now, because I do point out that if the fuel duty inflation index had been applied as determined by law since 2012, then the much publicised 22 billion black hole in the Chancellor's autumn budget would in all likelihood have been a surplus, so no need for the new EVED. So thank you, petrol, diesel and hybrid car drivers, for putting our entire UK economy seriously into the red for your own greed in a bid to keep your petrol prices down. Oh, and then you go and campaign to stop the pitifully small benefits given to EVs and their associated industries. Now, subsidies, grants and tax breaks, to be fair, are in fact an essential integral part of any modern economy. Governments use them to make sure society as a whole heads in the right direction. Take the LEVI fund, local electric vehicle infrastructure. It's trivial compared to the subsidies given to petrol car drivers. It's just 381 million. And its task is to help local councils install street chargers for those residents that cannot charge at home. Yeah, all you moaners, not all subsidies are for the rich. Direct grants are available to make sure all residents can benefit from the transition to EVs and a cleaner, greener future for everyone. Or maybe you're secretly campaigning for even more urban pollution. Do let me know. Well, the government proudly announced that we now have about 160,000 public EV chargers in the UK, and then go and announce that Kent this year is using the LEVI fund to begin installing 10,000 new on-street chargers, with the majority being fast chargers below 22 kilowatts. That's costing, 12 million? Yeah, million, not billion. It represents about 1 day's worth of the money lost to the Treasury and kept in your pocket by not increasing your fuel duty in line with inflation just this year alone, 1 day. Well, that levy money comes from central government, so it's having zero effect on Kent's council's budget. 10,000 new charges in Kent starting this year. That's the single largest scheme operated under the levy scheme. At least it was before Hampshire went one better. They've announced 17,180 new chargers, mainly street fast chargers. They're teaming up with Believe, that's EV charging. Wow, is this a competition? Who's going to be next? But these street chargers are aimed specifically at the less well-off and those that cannot charge at home. Less well-off? How can I claim that? Well, you see, I've never bought a brand new car in my many decades of motoring. Not a single one. I have had brand new cars as company cars at times over the last 40 or 50 years and been taxed for the privilege. I am one of the much larger group of car buyers who, if they don't or can't get a company car, buys used cars. My last one was a good few years ago now, but it was a Citroën C4 Grand Picasso. It was £17,000 as a 2-year-old reasonably low mileage car, and my finance was around £200 a month. By the way, my insurance as a business user with very high mileage was well over £100 a month, and I had to pay all my own servicing, repairs, tyres and road tax. Plus, obviously, my own fuel. And that was averaging back then over £400 a month. Now, today, with salary sacrifice, I and many others could get a brand new EV that includes maintenance, insurance, and even tyres, and then charge it at home, if I could, for much less. An MG4 would be about £250 a month all in, with Tesla Model 3 being about £350. But in all cases, I would no longer have to pay the £100 insurance or any maintenance or servicing, not even tyres, and especially not that £400 a month in diesel. Oh, by the way, my previous 45,000 miles a year at 45 miles a gallon, which is what it was doing, is 1,000 gallons of diesel at current prices. That's over £7,000 a year. Home charging for that same mileage is nowhere near even £1,000 a year. So before you claim all the people only buying EVs because of the grants, give me an honest answer. Which would you prefer? £1,000 a year on your electricity bill at home off-peak rates, or £7,000 a year diesel bill? It's nothing to do with subsidies and grants. 70% of the UK population can and do charge at home at these sorts of rates. An average EV driver today doing 8,000 miles a year that can charge at home pays well under £200 a year. The average petrol car driver doing 40 miles a gallon pays well over £1,200 a year. Which of those do you prefer? Yeah, it's actually cheaper today to get a brand new EV, even with high mileage, than struggle with a used petrol or diesel car. Far cheaper. And just before anyone claims we're leasing, you end up with nothing. Let me ask you, what do you think is the value of a 6-year-old Citroën C4 Grand Picasso with well over 200,000 miles on the clock that needed a clutch, cylinder head and suspension work? Yeah, that's what I got when I bought the car. And I can tell you, it wasn't an awful lot of money I got when I sold it. Now, an estimated 7 million people in the UK are believed to be benefiting from such salary sacrifice schemes. Ordinary workers, office staff, secretaries, clerks. As for charging, if I lived in Kent, couldn't charge at home, my work didn't have any chargers in their car park, I could just use this absolute mass of new public chargers, all priced around about 56 pence, based on current prices, not the 89 pence that everyone else quotes. And even if that works out to be about the same per mile as driving a petrol car, that new petrol car on the salary sacrifice is dramatically dearer, often a couple of £100 a month dearer, thanks to a higher benefit in kind rate. EVs are just much cheaper these days. Well, it's just 2 councils using none of their own dwindling budget to install tens of thousands of street chargers for residents that cannot charge at home. And there are over 100 of the larger unitary authorities and county councils in the UK, and over 100 district councils, then tens of thousands of parish and town councils. Now, while much of that EV charger growth is subsidised, not all is. Heading right up the power chain to BYD, installing over 300 what they call flash megawatt chargers, each rated at 1,500 kilowatts. There is no cost to the council, the country, or the UK government. These government schemes do not favour the likes of Tesla, Osprey, GridServe, and BYD flash charging. These are purely commercial installations funded almost entirely by the CPOs. And there are tens of thousands of these that have been installed recently as part of the 160,000 public EV chargers. These are not subsidised, just like petrol stations aren't subsidised. Are we installing the right type of chargers? Well, that's an interesting question. I suggest very strongly that we're not. See, unlike petrol cars, where every single car needs to visit a petrol station to fill up, over 70% of all EV owners fill up at home while they sleep, and a very high number of them never ever charge using a public charger. That means that around 40% of homeowners cannot charge at home. How about instead of pouring millions into more street chargers that are relatively expensive, you pour just a part of that into getting them to be able to charge at home? You see, 25% of our housing stock is terraced and Victorian houses which front onto the road but have no off-street parking. But they've got that pesky pavement between the house and the car. I'm talking now about professionally installed cable gullies that are being blocked by the majority of councils. Tackling that issue would mean most of them could then charge at home. No longer 70% can, more like 90%. You see, the buying or leasing public, in actual fact, couldn't be bothered where they charge, home or public chargers. What they really want is the ability to charge their EVs at the exact same price, the low price, that those that can charge at home enjoy. In an impossible ideal world, if public charging was the same price as home charging, every single EV driver would always charge at the very cheapest prices. None of the government or council schemes, grants, subsidies or tax breaks goes anywhere near tackling that issue. So what grants, subsidies and tax breaks do aim to achieve is to clean up the air that we all breathe. Clues in the name: clean air zones, speed restriction zones on motorways to reduce air pollution. Our cities are heavily polluted. Our motorways are heavily polluted, and that has dramatic direct impacts on our health, our children's health, and also our children's development, not to mention the massive rise in allergies. Stopping the pollution will see a healthier population, fewer queues at our hospitals and doctors' surgeries. Wouldn't you prefer no queues at the doctors or almost instant NHS operations when needed? Now, I have to admit, I cannot believe that these moaners are actually positively supporting any form of transport that produces higher pollution levels and increases those queues at our hospitals. Latest Public Health England figures show that between 5,000 and 7,000 premature deaths a year are down to air pollution from transport. Tens of thousands of fewer patients would attend hospitals and result in over 20 billion in direct savings annually. Now, I truly believe that the ICE supporters on my comments thread have not actually thought any of this through. Stopping the growth in ICE cars and supporting EVs is directly beneficial to them, their immediate family and their grandchildren. Is there anyone stupid enough to openly admit to supporting a policy that directly harms or kills them off? Anyone brave enough to admit to trying to block EVs, knowing the consequences? Well, the UK government is right to promote EVs, right to ensure the charging infrastructure is in place and fit for purpose, right to try to help those less well off in society. So I've often wondered about the sanity of anyone who clearly hates EVs or the support they're getting, yet watches regular videos about exactly that, EVs. See, I don't like private jets, but I don't spend hours of my life watching them on YouTube, then arguing in the comments section why they should be banned. Why? Anyway, just a final thought to shut up these ridiculous arguments before they flare up again. Just think about where your argument actually takes you. Now, there are regular climate change or pollution meetings around the world. People often fly great distances in those private jets to attend, where they become targets now for all these neggies. But picture this, a CEO flies off to Hawaii or New Zealand for such a meeting, and at that meeting becomes convinced by the weight of actual evidence that climate change and pollution are targets that are assuming critical importance. That CEO then goes back and instigates a green policy for the company, its products or services, its staff, and its staff's transport needs. The net benefit to the planet absolutely dwarfs the extra pollution his private jet caused. I'm Dave.